this. Let's see the map. Okay. It might not be very clear, but if you really look within the map itself, I hope people can see. Below the red circles are patches which are green and pink. The green patches are actually national parks, and there are 20 of them. Then the pink ones that surround the national parks are called game management areas. These two constitute the public wildlife areas, public as government owned. But beyond that, we also have privately owned game ranches, which could also be areas for tourism visitation especially. And I talk about game ranches as really also an opportunity for investment, not really in national parks, but on the Zambian landscape. It is an opportunity. We'll come back to this map, but probably let me concentrate on this so that we can cut down on time. Because the next slides really are about this very map. If we look at this map, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get back to the map because this is talking about the map. If we look at the map, the tourism master plan that I mentioned in the introduction identifies 10 areas or 10 nodes for tourism development. The 10 nodes are the Kafue system, the leftmost cycle which is thick, that's the Kafue. We have also below it the Livingstone node, and just to the right of it we have, maybe I can use the Kesa, where the Kesa is, that's the Siavonga node, and Lusaka node. Then we have also the Lower Zambezi node, we have the Copper Belt node, we have the Luangwa node, then we have the Banggolo node, then we have the Tanganyika node, which is the Sumbu area. If you count these are the major areas for tourism development in the country. And if you look at them, most of them constitute national parks. And this is why I was saying, actually about 70% of Zambia's tourism is based on wildlife. Now, these are the areas where we are going to concentrate in terms of tourism development in the next 20 years or so. But later, we will actually expand into areas which are dotted. I hope you're able to see the dotted polygons. The one on the left side, which is the western area for tourism development, and looking into it is the northwestern area, partial node, and then next to that is between the Luangwa and the Banggolo, we have another node for tourism development, as in the next phase of development. And lastly, but not the least, it is the expanded area of the Tanganyika area. This area is really very rich in waterfalls. You can count more than 50 waterfalls just in this area. So this is another area where tourism can be expanded into. Let's let's get to the next slide. Okay, so I've talked about the priority areas, the 10 of them. We have the Lusaka, Ndola, Siavonga, Livingstone, Santia, which is the Banggolu, Kafue Flats. I didn't mention Kafue Flats, but Kafue National Park, Lower Zambezi, Luangwa Valley, and Kasaba Bay. Ladies and gentlemen, each of these is unique to offer tourism development, tourism investment. I have listed Lusaka, Ndola, Siavonga, Livingstone, and also Sanfia to some extent. These have an urban characteristic, and therefore they would be affiliated largely to adventure tourism. And then the other categories, starting from Kafue Flats, getting lower, these are more in the pristine areas. So each one of these offers really a unique opportunity for development. I would like to give maybe slight examples of what we have. In the Kafue Flats, which is number 10, point number 6, sorry. In the Kafue Flats, where we have Lokinva and Blue Lagoon, Lokinva is very well known by people that love birds, and the people nicknamed this area as a birder's paradise. It's actually a paradise for birds. In this area, you find more than 400, more than 500 species of birds. Zambia has about 720 species of birds, but in Lokinva alone, you find more than 500 species. So that's a birder's paradise. And for those that really love bird life, that's what you can find. And the Kafue Lechwe, that's the only place where you will find it in the Kafue Flats. So it is unique by itself. Kafue National Park, it's the most pristine area, most pristine. You'll find the most diverse animal species. Just alone in the Kafue itself, you find 23 mammal species in the Kafue. And that the very few areas that really can beat Kafue National Park in terms of diversity of mammal species. Lower Zambezi, if you get to Lower Zambezi, even if you don't see animal life, as the environment is healing, the environment itself is appealing, and it is unique, and people have gone there and come, even if they didn't see a lot of wildlife, they actually have enjoyed the environment. So that in itself is really very, very unique. If you look at this, the Kasanka, Kasaba Bay, sorry, the Kasaba Bay, this is where you have Lake Tanganyika, and Lake Tanganyika in itself is a unique area where you will find the most attractive fish. The water there that you find in Lake Tanganyika is so odd that the endemism of fish in the area is really unique to the area. And so scuba diving is one attraction that you can have. So if you invest in Zambia, you can actually have circuits in the country that you can take your tourists from one place to another, and they'll be able to appreciate the diversity of resources in the country. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, in the longer term, like I said, you have the North Tourism Development Area, the expanded the Kasaba Bay area. You have also the Banggolu Tourism Development Area, where you have Kasanka National Park, Lavushmanda National Park. Kasanka is well known for the bat migration. More than 10 million bats fly and flock into Zambia and roost in Kasanka itself and the surrounding area. This is the largest mammal migration. We have not sold this as it deserves to be, but it's the largest mammal migration that we have on the planet. Yet we have kind of undersold this asset or this resource. The Northwestern Tourism Development Area and then the Western Side Tourism Development Area. Let's proceed to the next. Okay, so in national parks, wildlife protected areas in Zambia are managed through general management plans, meaning that an area, a national park, is first of all planned, and before a manager can walk there, he needs to find a plan. And the plan is what guides the manager on what area can be used for what activity. So general management plans have zones which define management of the protected area or the national park. Tourism development zones are areas where tourism development are allowed. Within the tourism development zone are identified sites which will guide anyone who would like to invest in those areas, in those national parks. So we have like dots on the map, and when an investor comes, we are able to say, this site has been taken, that site has been taken, these sites are still open, and then we can take him or her to those areas, and then they're able to choose among those sites which one they prefer. After an investor identifies a preferred site, a development concept is presented to the Department of National Parks and Wildlife. After you see the site, then you can develop a concept so that you can come and present this concept to the Department of National Parks so that we can actually start already to kind of marry between conservation and commercial development. We wouldn't like commercial development to override conservation because the resource itself depends, tourism itself depends on the resource. So we need to balance the two. So the concept itself needs to be presented, and then in the presentation we discuss what may be dislocated in concept. And then after that, the investor is asked to develop a full business proposal. Next. Or is it probably needs to be scrolled up before we can come to the steps to be undertaken?
Director, we have 2 minutes.
That's right. This is my last slide. Now, the steps are needed for you to invest in a national park are about 8 of them. First of all, we will not allow an individual to apply for a site. You need to apply for a site as a company that is in the national park. So register your company with PACRA. After you register your company with PACRA, then you obtain a tourism investment license from ZDA. Then you need to really have your records straight with the Zambia Revenue Authority. After these 3, then you can express your interest for the site that you might have seen in the national park. Step 5, you develop a full development proposal, a business proposal. We have specific guidelines on how this business proposal needs to look like. After you are granted the site, when we see that the proposal is fine, then you are granted the site. After you've been granted the site, we go into negotiation to develop a concession agreement. This agreement is mutually agreed upon. When we agree, then we can say you are ready to start development on site. But before you do any development, you need to have an environmental impact assessment or an environmental and social impact assessment, which is submitted to the Zambia Environmental Management Agency. The Zambia Environmental Management Agency will look into your EIA and see whether you considered all the aspects of your investment and how your investment would impact upon the environment and the social surrounding. When ZEMA says they have no objection, then you are ready to actually start to construct in the national park your lodge. Thereafter, you can actually start to operate. These are the steps that are undertaken in order to invest in a national park. Ladies and gentlemen, that's my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Semukonda. That was very informative, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions in the chat for you for the Q&A. We're going to be having a talk, and then we'll play a video from Destination Livingstone about the Musutunia, and my colleague will introduce the next three speakers after that. So comms team, as soon as we introduce the next speaker and the speaker finishes, please play the video. I'd like to bring to the floor Ms. Doris Chupekile Kofi, the Acting Chief Executive of the Zambia Tourism Agency, who will be talking about tourism licensing and grading.
Doris, I think you're on mute.
Miss,
Hello.
You're live. Go ahead.
The Zambia High Commissioner in the UK, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Tourism and Arts, the Board Chairperson, Zambia Tourism Agency, simply to recognize the organizers as well. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to present on licensing and grading tourism in Zambia. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so I'll quickly go through the presentation outline. I'll talk about the introduction, basically to introduce what we do at Zambia Tourism Agency. I'll also talk about investment laws and incentives, tourism regulation, minimum requirements, the licensing process. We'll also talk about grading, then the benefits of regulation, and conclude with tourism marketing. Next slide, please. So at Zambia Tourism Agency, we were established through an Act of Parliament, number 13 of 2015, and our mandate is to market Zambia as a tourist destination, both locally and abroad, and to also regulate the tourism industry through licensing of enterprises and grading of accommodation establishments. Next. Hello. Thank you. So in terms of tourism enterprise, all encompassing the different segments, it could be activity operations, it could be accommodation, car hire, a travel agency. All of these require regulation as embedded Hospitality Act, which I already referred to in the previous slide. You need investment licenses from the Zambia Development Agency. I think the previous speaker spoke already about the different steps in terms of what licenses are required. You also need to get permits, investment permits or registration of the company through PAPRA. I believe by now we all know what that stands for. Then investors are allowed to, set up their businesses in any sector. Some of them are closed to indigenous investments. Others are open to all, whether local or indigenous investors. Next slide, please. So before I talk about other things, there are quite a number of incentives when one is investing in the tourism sector. For any incentives which are sector specific, those will be guided by Zambia Development Agency and also the Zambia Revenue Authority. From time to time, these incentives are revised, so it is important that at any given time when one is going through the registration of their businesses or are trying to invest, that they check with these two agencies of government to see what incentives are available at the time one to invest. If I mean to the tourism Minister of Tourism or Zambia Tourism Agency in terms of incentives or any relief measures, again, those will be guided what would be available. This is a presentation by the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Tourism and Arts. He spoke about the relief measures in the 2021 national budget, and there's quite a number of them this year. One that comes to mind immediately is the importation of vehicles, be it a bus, open 4x4 vehicle, or transport equipment this year is exempt from duty when importing into the country. So this is quite an opportune time for people who would like to venture into transport to actually, take advantage of the relief that is currently available. The other relief measures are applicable to those who are already operating in the sector. Next slide, please. Okay, so I would like to talk about this. The other instruments of regulation under tourism. Guidance, the Tourism and Hospitality Act of 2015. There are also what we call statutory instruments, which look at specific or segments of tourism regulation. We have listed the licensing, and under licensing, there's a lot to guide the different segments of investment. It could be accommodation, car hire. Each of those, the scrutiny process is different, or what other permits are even before submit for an application to the Zambia Tourism Agency. So that is in a statutory instrument 2016. These statutory instruments are readily available for downloads on the Zambia Tourism Agency website, or usually they would also be available through the Parliament website. And Google is a good place to stop and, download most of these if you can't remember where to download them from. There's also the accommodation standards, which is grading, and this is embedded in statutory instrument number 14 of 2018. We also have prepaid package tours. This is basically about submitting returns if you are involved into prepaid packages in terms of tours. So there is a requirement in addition to licensing where you're supposed to submit returns or annually. Also, the service charges the accommodation sector. Again, the respective statutory instrument is number 100 of 2016. In addition, we have the tourism levy. This is applicable to all accommodation, include restaurants. So this is actually specific to the tourism sector and is anchored in the Ministry of Tourism and Arts. It goes back into the sector through training, through marketing, through product development, just to mention but a few. And also we have a requirement for registration of hotel managers. So all hotel managers are required by law to be registered through the Hotel Managers Registration Council. This is anchored in the Ministry of Tourism and Arts. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we're talking about minimum requirements. Where do you start from? You have your PACRA there, you have your Zambia Revenue Authority where you need to register for your TPIN. You also need work permits. If you are using foreign labor, you need to ensure that before you even start, your foreign labor force has the right permits and they're valid all the time. You need an investment certificate from Zambia Development Agency. And if you are going to operate in a national park, I will not belabor on this point because Dr. Simkonda, the previous speaker, spoke about this in detail. There are a number of things that you have to do. And also, some of the operations require permits from the local authorities. This will be the council. So in each area of operation, there is a municipality that will provide the details of what permits need to be paid for. And usually those fees are negligible. And most of these regulations, when a permit is issued, it will be valid up to 3 years, just like the tourism one. So the council as well is now giving permits with a validity of up to 3 years. Next slide, please. If you are investing into tourism transport, again, you have to look at those different requirements, which will be obtainable from RATSA, and the details are given on the slide. You need comprehensive insurance. You have to ensure that the vehicles have roadworthy worthiness certificate and that the drivers are qualified PSV drivers. If you are involved in tours, you need tour guides, and this and certified by a certified trainer as well. And this information is readily available from Zambia Tourism Agency. And above all, each business must have an active bank account which is domiciled in the country. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So there's also need for public liability insurance. So this one, whether you are transport, accommodation, tours, it's a must. And also on submission of the application, we need a project proposal with, a 5-year projection of or returns, so to speak. On top of that, the regulatory team at Zambia Tourism Agency will have to pre-inspect before awarding the permit or license. And before you are given, sometimes, when the screening process through the committee that is responsible for things that have been outlined, the application could be approved on condition that until you provide missing certification or documentation, then you'll get your license approved. Next slide. We continue with the license. No, I think you've gone back. I talked about liability and the project proposal. Shall we proceed, please? Okay, so I'm now going to talk about the grading process. The grading process is only applicable to accommodation establishments. And before you even apply for grading, you first have to obtain the license to operate as accommodation establishment. So under grading, by using the standard 5-star grading is used globally. Most countries localize some of the assessment processes to make it easier for the operator. So one has to pay a grading fee, and the grading fee is calculatable based on what star grading an applicant wishes to be graded in, and also the number of rooms. Then in terms of after you pay the fee, and the fee, after you pay the fee, then the grading assessor, have what we call grading assessors. They'll then be sent to the accommodation establishment.
Miss Coffee, your feed is really choppy.
All the applicable.
Your feed is really choppy.
Hello?
And you've only got a minute. Your feed is really choppy, and you've only got a minute to go now.
For now. Okay. This is almost the end. So when one applies for grading, an assessor is sent on site to go and assess, and there are different assessment areas, and scores have to be given. Depending on the final score, that's what would determine the star grading that needs to be awarded. And when then a plaque is also given to the applicant, which is then placed on location at the establishment. And the star grading certificate is valid for 2 years before one can apply again for grading. Shall we proceed to the next slide? So in terms of benefits for regulation, one might ask, so I do all this, what happens? We are also a marketing entity, so we Zambia as a tourist destination, both locally and abroad. So we will be able to avail all these marketing platforms to only those that are fully regulated. And as I've outlined in the presentation, there are those different points that give the areas of beneficiation to the applicant. 1 minute, I suppose it's over. We can go now. The last slide, please. Before this one. Yeah, so just to mention, I talked about the regulatory function of Zambia Tourism Agency, but we are also a tourism marketing entity promoting the country, and we use different forums to promote Zambia as a social media, exhibitions, roadshows, all those. It's a plethora of activities, and these are open to those that are fully regulated. I'm so sorry to have rushed through the presentation, but this is the end of the presentation. Very much.
Thank you very much. It was a highly informative one, and I'm really sorry that we had a choppy feed going. I'm going to ask the comms team to put on the video, and then if Dr. Melissa Kapolo can get ready to take over soon after that to introduce the next few acts. Comms team.
got a bit of a technical challenge. Please proceed to the next segment.
Dr. Melissa Kapulu, please come on.
Thank you very much, Sandy. So for the next set of the next session is going to be dealing with investment incentives and finance. So we've got 3 speakers lined up, and the first speaker is from the Zambia Development Agency. So can I ask, are you still there, Mr. Simwanda?
I am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simwanda. So our next speaker is Mr. Simwanda, who's going to take us through what ZDA has in terms of investment incentives in the tourism sector. Over to you, Mr. Simwanda.
Thank you. Comms team, are we able to beam the presentation? Thank you very much. The High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, His Excellency, Lieutenant General Paul Mihova, retired, the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Tourism and Arts, Mr. Patrick Lungu. May I simply recognize our protocols? My presentation is centered on investment incentives that are attached currently to the tourism sector in Zambia. However, I'll highlight a few factors that might influence investment decisions to the audience. Next slide, please. I would want to highlight the market potential that Zambia has to offer. As we are aware, Zambia is a party to a number of trade agreements. To start with, I would want to highlight the SADC region that we are party to. It offers you a market of about 342 million people. COMESA offers you a market of about 450 million people. And I would want to talk about the recent CFTA that just came into effect 1st January of this year, which offers you a market of over 1.3 billion people. This definitely has to encourage you to invest in Zambia, looking at the market potential that Zambia has to offer. Next slide, please. This slide intends to highlight most of the unique factors that we have, but the previous speakers have alluded to most of these factors, especially the Permanent Secretary. The one factor that I would want to point out here is the contribution of the tourism sector to the national GDP in 2019, which was 7%. This serves to state that this sector is very important, and we encourage all of you to invest in this sector to help improve our economy. Next slide, please. This presentation is centered on this slide. As alluded to by the CEO for the Zambia Tourism Agency, the country from time to time revises the incentive package that we have to offer to different sectors of the economy. So currently, the country is offering quite a number of incentives, some fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. Just to highlight the fiscal incentives that we have to offer as a country to the tourism sector currently, we are offering the 0% duty on imported equipment, that is capital goods, which has been highlighted or alluded to by the previous speaker. This has to do with the motor vehicles and all the other equipment that you may import for your project. The other one is the 0 rate on value-added tax on other tourist services provided to foreign tourists other than those that are included in a tour package. The third one is a refund on value-added tax for non-resident tourists and visitors on selected goods. The fourth one is no import VAT on all goods temporarily imported into the country by foreign tourists. We are also offering capital allowances of up to 50% on the cost of plant and machinery. To speak to the non-fiscal incentives that we're currently offering, so the country is offering protection to your investments and guarantee against nationalization. In as the case may be, maybe the experience that we saw in our neighboring country, Zimbabwe. This will not happen in Zambia if you invest in Zambia and we execute an agreement called an investment protection and promotion agreement. The other non-fiscal incentive that we are offering is free facilitation of applications for immigration permits, among other secondary licenses that we offer free facilitation. The other, or the last but not the least, non-fiscal incentive we are offering is the facilitation for the acquisition of land and other utilities. I believe most of us who haven't been back home for some time would want to acquire some land, and ZDA would facilitate for the acquisition of this land for free. Next slide, please. This slide intends to just show how easy it is to invest, to register a project in Zambia. The previous speaker touched on this. You start registering your investment project with the Patents and Company Registration Agency, which you can do online. And I think it's done within 48 hours. And immediately you are linked to the Zambia Revenue Authority, where you are allocated a taxpayer's identification number. Immediately you register with the PRAC. Thereon, you proceed to register with the Zambia Development Agency and you are issued with an investment license. From there, you need to engage the Zambia Tourism Agency for your tourism license. And at this point, I would want to mention that once you register with the ZDA will facilitate for the registration of all the subsequent licenses for free. I think we seem to have a challenge with the slides there. Okay, thank you. As I was saying, once you register with the ZDA will facilitate for you for free to register for all the subsequent licenses, including the application to ZESCO, Immigration Department for any permits, the local authorities, and all the other secondary licenses. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just to outline the services that the ZDA offers. So to start with, we offer business development support services. This includes, it starts from the facilitation before you set up, all the way up to aftercare services after you set up your investment. We ensure that even after the investment is set, we will be visiting or checking on you just to see if the project is going on smoothly. As earlier stated, we issue investment licenses under the ZDA, or what we call multi-facility economic zone permits if you are operating in any of the zones dotted across the country. We also facilitate for free for business linkages, that's forward and backwards. So if you need any primary linkages and secondary linkages to your business, the ZDA will facilitate for that for free. I touched on the signing of an investment promotion and protection agreement, which protects you against nationalization, among other benefits. We also nurture and formalize small to medium enterprises, and these usually will be in the primary linkages into your project. Then obviously the major thing and the focus of this presentation is the ZDA recommends you to the Ministry of Finance and eventually to the Zambia Revenue Authority for tax rebates, which are attached to the incentives. Next slide, please. I would like to thank you for your attention. Most of the services that the ZDA has to offer were mentioned by the previous speakers. Next slide. Before you, I wanted us to share our contact details so that maybe the audience could get in touch with the ZDA beyond this interaction so that we could engage further on the specifics of the projects. So those are our details. If you would want to discuss the specifics of your interests, please get in touch with the ZDA through those details and we'll be more than willing to help you. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simonda, for letting us know the incentives available under the ZDA. So I'll just encourage people to keep posting your questions within the chat box. And for any speakers, if you can, just check the chat box and see if there are any questions that you're able to answer. So the comms team tells me they're currently available to play the video. So comms team, over to you. Thank you very much for that, and hope we can have sound on the next video. So our next speaker is the chairperson for the Zambia Tourism Council, Mr. Vincent Mukwaya. If you're still on the call, please get ready to give your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting us as Tourism Council of Zambia to participate on this very prestigious forum where we are all having a dialogue on Zambia's climate for investing in the tourism sector. Like you have rightly introduced me, I am Vincent Mukwaya. I'm the current chairperson of the Tourism Council of Zambia. I would like to recognize the presence of the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Tourism and Arts, Mr. Patrick Lungu, and also to recognize the presence of the Zambia's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, Lieutenant General Paul Mihova, retired. Thank you very much. We are Tourism Council of Zambia. We are a private sector. First of all, we can go to the next slide. We are a private sector lobby group. We look. I'm going to go through the introduction and the investment opportunities, government policy on tourism investment, and business investment climate, and Zambia's ranking in terms of the tourism and the streamlined tourism regulation and so on and so forth. Please, next slide. I must say that first of all, tourism is recognized as a major economic sector. I presume this is the correct presentation that you have given me. Otherwise, I sent another presentation that should have been given to me. Please just counter check, because this is completely when we are pitching to a different audience. And on this particular one, I would like to talk about the benefits that are there when you become a member of the Tourism Council, or when you come to invest in Zambia, in the Zambia's tourism landscape. Therefore, I would say Tourism Council of Zambia is a lobby group that is recognized by law, and that has got a membership across the tourism value chain. Our members range from the hotels, the airlines, the travel agents, the tour operators, car hire, lodge owners, safari owners, hunters, safari, and all these sectors of the tourism value chain. So therefore, we are a non-profit, we are not for-profit organization, and therefore we are a subscription-based organization. And what is our role? Our role in this sector is to ensure that all issues that affect the tourism sector are handled through our secretariat. And secondly, we are the one-stop shop for government intervention, where you find we are called upon for any policy formulation or anything to do with the development in the tourism. I think let's go to the next slide. Like we have heard already from previous speakers, that Zambia has got abundant wildlife. In the wildlife subsector, there are a lot of opportunities that the previous speakers have already alluded to that could be taken advantage of, and our private sector participants have already invested in those areas, starting from Lower Zambezi, Livingstone, Kafue National Park, up to South Luangwa. We are now also looking at opportunities that have gone furthermore into the north. There have been issues that have been brought up in terms of the tourism master plan, where we have also had an input as the Tourism Council of Zambia. We have been called upon by government relevant departments, be it direct Ministry of Tourism or other sector related. As you know, that tourism is encompasses many ministries, including the Ministry of Home Affairs, to do with the immigration permits and so on and so forth. So we are there to assist based on what we have as a best practice in the past. And we also do, from time to time, get consultancies to help us in terms of cross-cutting industry needs. Next slide, please. I think all this has already been spoken about by the previous speakers. In terms of, yes, when you see, I beg your pardon, all these areas, when they are opened up, I just want to emphasize the point that there has been transparency in terms of the investment opportunities, in terms of government and the other departments, like the Department of National Parks. Dr. Simkonda mentioned, there's a lot of transparency in those areas, and we, as Tourism Council of Zambia, do put a watchful eye to ensure that investors that come and want to get that information on how to invest are given accurate information, timely, so that they are able to invest in those particular areas, because it is for the interest of the country that we get a quality and a highly recommended investment to grow the tourism sector. For us, our interest is to ensure that there is growth in the sector. Because when there is growth in the sector, it means therefore that we have a larger resource base, and we have a larger group to represent. Next slide, please. Overall, the government policy and legislation on the tourism development has approved in 2015 is on which there has been an encouragement in the participation of private sector. The government has been very open in terms of encouraging private sector participation in this tourism sector. Therefore, it is open across, like I've said already. And also the government has been very clear that there is no foreign exchange controls in Zambia, as opposed to other neighboring countries where there is still foreign exchange controls. So in Zambia, if you invest, you as an investor, you are able to get your returns and ensure that you maximize on reinvesting, or you have to have a return on your investment naturally. So there is no issues to worry about, and we encourage as many of our diaspora-based would-be investors to come forward, contact us, and we will direct you we'll put you in the right direction, and ensure that the tourism development environment is sustainable. The government has, in the last few years, either upgraded or built greenfield airports. Zambia is boasting of 3 international high-standing airport infrastructure. Harimanga Nkumbula in Livingstone is such an example, and then the new Kenneth Kaunda. Although the terminal has not yet been commissioned, we're talking of also the Copperbelt International Airport, which is Simon Masaka Pwepwe. These airport infrastructures have been put up on at a colossal sums of money, but they are there to anchor the very essence of having tourism inflows in the country, so that Zambia gets to be the hub of tourism inflow, especially from the United Kingdom. Because as things are going, pretty soon there will be some direct flights getting into the country. Economic diversification, this I should not be repeating what others have already said. We need to diversify the economy and ensure that the tourism value chain is sustainable. Provide investment and incentive in tourism. The government has already alluded to that. The Honorable Permanent Secretary has told us some of the investments that have been put forward in the 2021 national budget. Encourage rural community participation, very key, very key. Some of you listening to us would be saying, what are the rural dwellers doing in this thing? I think there are resource boards that have been set up. There are community participation that has come up with as cooperatives to try and run the infrastructure of tourism. Just recently in Northwestern,
I think we may have lost the feed to Mr. Mukwara. Moderator, over to you.
I was just trying to reach him and find out if he's still there. I hope he can come back on, but it doesn't look like he's still online, but likely he's lost reception or connection. Yeah, he's just dropped off the call. So with that, then we'll have the next speaker, who is Brian Ross, and is the current Deputy CEO of Prospero Zambia, as well as the tourism lead for Prospero. So David, if you could please come and give your presentation.
Great, of course. Thank you very much for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you. I'd like to start with a brief introduction of the company that I'm representing, which is Prospero. But before I do that, I just wanted to acknowledge His Excellency, the Ambassador of Zambia to the UK, Honorable Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Tourism Arts, Board Chairperson from ZTA, and Director Sumakonda of the Department of National Parks and Wildlife, and of course, our other distinguished colleagues. And last but not least, Zambians Together. I really appreciate the work that your group is doing on this issue, and thank you for the invitation to participate. Great. So as you can see, the topic at hand is SME financing. And we'll start just with the next slide with a brief presentation of my company and how we engage in this issue. So we are essentially a Zambian registered and based company here in Lusaka. And we're currently implementing a project funded by UK aid. So there's a nice connection there with where this diaspora group is coming from and the work that we're doing. And what we're doing really is focused on helping Zambian small and medium enterprises grow. And a large part of that is investment facilitation. So we're working in tourism and ag. We're working in food and agriculture. We're working in tourism and hospitality. We're working in mining supply chains, and we have also kind of business services and an investment services departments as well. Essentially, how we work is we work with potential investors, we work with businesses, we work with government departments and other stakeholders interested in seeing these sectors grow. And then essentially we work together on innovative business models that have some type of an inclusive benefit in terms of job creation or economic expansion or investment, and a lot of these types of benefits is kind of what we're really focused on in terms of the businesses that we engage and we support. And obviously, as a development organization, our primary goals really do revolve around job creation and poverty reduction through these sectors and primarily through the private sector investment. Next slide, please. So briefly, I think this is an interesting slide. I want to dispel a couple of misconceptions that I commonly hear when we're engaged in this sector. And the first revolves around capital requirements. I think Zambia has a reputation in some circles for being quite high end and quite expensive. And I've seen a couple of comments in the chat box around that. And I think as a result of that, often people think that the capital requirements for getting into the tourism sector and investing in the tourism sector are high, which is not true. Obviously, if you're interested in a very high class 5-star safari lodge and in a prime area of South Luangwa National Park, that is going to cost a lot of money. But there are tremendous opportunities for relatively low cost investment in cultural products, historical products, adventure tourism, food tourism, and kind of other niche products that can be developed with reasonable financial outlay. So that's just the first misconception I wanted to dispel around this issue. The second one is, quote unquote, this is, some people, and I often hear this from Zambians themselves, which to me is really unfortunate, and it's something that I continually am working against, just trying to kind of raise awareness and combat the mindset that Zambian or tourism is not a sector for Zambians. And I think in some ways, this is also changing. I think COVID has really brought more attention on domestic tourism sector, on opportunities for investment with the domestic sector in mind, and I'm really excited to see this and see this kind of happening, because I think that it really can help to drive more Zambian entrepreneurs interested in the sector itself. And so that's the second misconception, and then the other one is related to financial upside. I also often hear from people in the sector who traditionally are less familiar that all the people in tourism, especially the international people, are rich, and that tourism is a huge money spinner, and it costs a lot, but you earn a lot, right? And obviously there is money to be made in the tourism sector. Some people make quite a lot of money in the tourism sector, but I think it's also very important to know that it's just like any other sector, and you really need to know your strategy. You need to really have thought through your business plan, and really know what you're doing in order to be successful. it is a sector in many cases that related to kind of people's interest in lifestyle, right? Especially some of these very rural bush camps, where you set up the camp and the owner-operator model, and you're interested in living in the bush and living with the wildlife, and rarely are these types of places enormously profitable. So yeah, that's just another misconception that I wanted to address. So let's look at the next slide that just focuses a little bit more broadly. I mean, we've heard a lot of the opportunities that some of the prior speakers have mentioned, and they're all absolutely true. There's tremendous opportunity for investment in the tourism sector. I'm personally outside of Prospero and outside of my work, and I'm also an investor in the tourism industry. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing that if I didn't see good potential. Even despite COVID, I saw one person mention, what's the tourism prognosis after COVID, and I think my personal sense is that it's going to come back strong, but I think it's going to come back over the course of a couple of years, probably. Once vaccine rollouts in target kind of markets like Europe and US really get stronger, and I think once people have developed a bit more confidence in how the vaccine rollout has happened in Zambia, I think we'll really begin to start seeing some more traffic, which would be great. But yeah, I guess it's ripe for patient capital. And what I mean by that is tourism is not a get-rich-quick scheme. You really, as I said, you have to have a good business plan. You really have to know what you're doing, and you have to love it, really, or you hire people who love it, right? Those are two really key aspects, I think, of being successful in the tourism sector. Another key opportunity that I see plenty of here in Zambia is just the number of high-skilled people who have been working in the industry for a long time, and who might have reached kind of the pinnacle of their position in their current job or current employer, and are looking to branch out and potentially do something themselves or something new. And I see numbers of potential entrepreneurs in this that could well be open to partnerships, with investors. So that's another key opportunity I see. Key institutions such as the Department of National Parks and Wildlife and the Ministry of Tourism and ZTA. I've been kind of engaged with these over some time, and my personal sense is I'm seeing some real openness to partnering and creativity and business model development and tourism investment. So I think I'm seeing positive growth, and it's really encouraging for me within some of these key institutions. And another really interesting opportunity, I'd say, is this whole thing about inclusive models to kind of support the country. I think tourism is an industry that has a very wide supply chain. So, it takes food, it takes beverage, it takes all kinds of different types of goods, all types of different kinds of services, and they have a much, and that means it has a wide impact, right? And even in terms of kind of community engagement and community support, that can be a really strong part of your business model that actually makes you more competitive in many of these sorts of markets. More and more international tourists want to know that the holidays and the vacations that they take are having a positive economic impact on the communities in and around these protected areas, that they're contributing to conservation and all of these types of things. So there are ways to really support development in the country and poverty reduction while increasing your competitive edge as a business. And then the last point kind of opportunity slide is just that there is this enormous asset base in Zambia itself, like dramatically under commercialized, dramatically underutilized, and I think that the potential really for some fantastic, innovative new products is really there. My personal sense is that the Zambian tourism sector is ripe for kind of some disruptive and interesting and very innovative business models that go beyond the wildlife tourism or engage partially in the wildlife tourism and the safari industry. I think Zambia has developed its reputation really around that wildlife safari and a bit of adventure tourism in the Livingston area. But to me, there's so much more of that smart entrepreneurs and smart investors can really start taking a serious look at. You know, and as the permanent secretary mentioned, it's the government's job to really create a positive enabling environment for investment. And it's our job as entrepreneurs and investors to kind of actualize the potential into reality that we're seeing across the country, really. Next slide, please. So this is where we just get, you know, I mean, briefly, SME financing isn't particularly complicated, but personal funds are always the easiest and the fastest and the smoothest to deploy in terms of investing, right? It's just like any other business. If you have a bit of a cash, you know, savings that you can put toward investments, that's always going to be the fastest and easiest way to go about things. Leveraging through the banks in Zambia is, you know, especially for diaspora, I think is my personal sense is it's difficult. SME financing through banks in Zambia really is a chore and a mission, and the banks in some cases are really not well set up for SME financing. They're focused on much larger businesses where they have much less risk. And, you know, they can put their money into other investments that are much less risky than small kind of SME tourism startups, especially in a COVID era. So my personal sense is that some of you, you know, in the diaspora might have connections with banks here in Zambia that could give you preferential rates. But I would say for someone starting off in this industry, it's probably not the first place you want to look. As I mentioned, external investors or partners is a fantastic opportunity, you know, and some of the work that Prospero is doing is around kind of investment matchmaking with investors and entrepreneurs looking for finance. So that's always a really good option. And I think, you know, particularly if you don't have experience in the tourism sector, partnering with someone on the ground here who has experience and wants to grow expand their business, or, you know, experienced people who want to start up their own thing could be an interesting option to look at. And to some extent, donor programs, in some cases may have small kind of support, you know, grants or concessional financing. Most of this at the moment is really focused on biodiversity, conservation, community engagement, you know, where they have some kind of more of a development aspect to them. You know, there'll be very few kind of donor programs that are willing to just invest, you know, or give you free money to set up your own business if it's really not having some type of a wider impact on the environment or the community. So those, I would say, are just kind of the initial, you know, very basic buckets of potential SME opportunities that you might look at if you're interested to invest. Let's look at the next slide, please. So this kind of just looks at what Prospero is generally offering, you know, in terms of our work, right? We have a team involved in each of the sectors that we work in. You know, when we're looking to support people who want to get into tourism, who are into tourism, we want to incentivize innovation, new product development, especially around these inclusive business models that really do have a positive, wider impact on the community and the economy. And like, as I mentioned, we do quite a bit of this investment facilitation work as well. So if you're interested in this type of thing, I'd be very happy to be in contact. I'll post my email in the chat box, and feel free to send a note if that's of any interest in the future. I guess that's my, there's just a last slide, but it's basically a thank you for the time, and I hope that this kind of forum presents some interesting opportunities that really have a positive impact on the Zambian tourism sector. So thank you very much.
Very much, Brian, for keeping us informed on what Prospero is doing. So I'll hand over to my co-moderator, if you're still on, to come up and introduce the next set of speakers that are coming along. So please keep the questions coming in the chat box, and these will be answered during the question and answer session.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Thanks a lot, Melissa. And the next lot of speakers are going to speak, and then panelists, if you can start getting ready for the Q&A just after that. I would like to invite Mr. Joseph Moapu, the coordinator of Destination Lopula, to talk about investment opportunities in Lopula.
Thank you very much, moderator. I would like to recognize the presence of the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Tourism and Arts. I recognize the presence of His Excellency the High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, and to my colleague speakers and everybody who is joining us. Thank you for having me. Lopula Province, as you all know, is I think the most marketed province now in terms of marketing the opportunities that it has. In 2017, we became the first provincial administration to host an investment expo, an expo which was held under the theme linking the province to investors to unlock the economic potential. The background to this was the fact that when you look at all the parameters, the development parameters Lopula provinces list on the table in terms of development, in terms of unemployment for the youths, child marriages, all the negative, I think, aspects associated with the province. So in 2017, the provincial administration, under the leadership of Honorable Nixon Chilangwa, decided to challenge the technocrats to say, in terms of natural resource endowment, the province has everything it takes to turn around its fortunes, be it tourism, mining, agriculture, energy potential, and all that. So we then decided to package the province, and we anchored it on 7 sectors. And tourism is among the sectors that we have been marketing since then. In terms of the potential that exists in the province, from a tourism perspective, let me just give you a rundown. Lopula province has 14 waterfalls, with Zambia's second largest waterfall, the Lumangwe, situated in Kawambwa. Lopula province has 5 lakes. I know people just know of Lake Banggolu and Lake Mweru, but when you are in Samfya, you actually realize that the Lake Banggolu is among 5 other lakes that are found in that area. So in terms of water and aquatic or beach sports or tourism activities that can be found in the province, we actually rank highest. So the potential that we have now is that we first of all had to market in line with the Zambia Tourism Master Plan, which was trying by all means to turn around the fortunes of the Northern Circuit. You will remember that for a long time, Zambia was trying to use Cassava Bay as the entry to the Northern Circuit, but this hasn't worked out well. So Samfya was then identified after some consultancy work that was done. Samfya was identified as the gateway to the Northern Circuit. And for us as provincial administration, we have anchored the tourism potential, the development of the tourism potential in the province on Samfya. As we speak today, we have a multi-facility convention center that's coming up in Samfya. This is being developed by the Workers' Compensation, and it's going to have a 3-star hotel, 180 rooms, a 1,000-seater capacity convention hall, and a shopping mall. And what this has done is to, like PS did say in his speech, to make Zambia a hub for conferencing. We hope that after the COVID pandemic is under control, we can go back to actually seeing people travel and people expressing, or spending money in the MICE sector. So for Zambia, for us, it's our gateway. And the groundbreaking ceremony that took place last year when His Excellency the President did visit has actually taken the potential of Zambia to another level. We have other players coming into Zambia in the safari sector, people bringing in boats on Lake Banggolo. Now we have cruise boats on the lake. This is all being done by local Zambians at the moment in their personal capacity, or actually partnering with also other players from outside the country. And we have continued marketing Zambia, because when we market Zambia, we know that a tourist will come into the province, not only be in Zambia alone, but then be able to go up north to enjoy the waterfalls that we have. The geographic location of Luapula is such that all the waterfalls, the 14 waterfalls I'm talking about, are actually situated up north from Mansa into Kawambwa. So I'm sure the country is aware that, again, we created another event, which is the Banggolu Summerfest, because the challenge that tourism has is that if you don't have enough activities to keep a tourist in an area, then you are going to lose them, or they're not going to come and actually visit your destination. So we did create, and we keep creating, other events that are anchoring the natural resource endowment that we have. So for instance, we have the Banggolo Challenge Summerfest, and this is a 21-kilometer half marathon, which we dubbed the Banggolo Challenge. And His Excellency the President actually did come to participate in the event last year. And this actually saw us get recognition from Zambia Athletics, formerly Zambia Amateur Athletics Association. Just this Easter that has passed, we did then create another event which focuses on the waterfalls. As you know, waterfalls are at their peak during the rainy season, this time, April, May. So we created the Lakes and Waterfalls Cycling Tour, where we invited professional cyclists from Twin Palm Cycling Club, from Kansashi Cycling Club, who actually came and did the first ever, tour of Luapula using bicycles. And this was modeled on the Tour de France blueprint. And we have seen a lot of visitations from local tourists that are coming. And again, one thing that we have learned from the COVID lockdown is that if we are to build the tourism sector, we must actually promote local tourism itself. We have seen a lot of people visiting Zambia. We have seen Zambia competing with Siavonga, and we think that Luapula actually now is going to be the new destination. Now, these are not isolated incidences, or this highlight that Luapula is receiving today is not isolated. You will know that in 2007, the provincial administration, partnering with private sector, held Destination Luapula. This was the first time that the focus was now being put on the tourism potential of the province. So Destination Luapula was done in 2007. And then fast forward, that time our provincial minister was just a private player. He was in the business sector then. And then when he became provincial minister, he then decided to take it further. And we created the Luapula Expo investment program. Now, in order to create a tourism package, like Brian was saying, it's not a sector that gives you quick wins. Tourism takes time to actually, mold it, manage it, and ensure that you can actually compete with other destinations that are already established in the world. So we have been liaising with line ministries, like Ministry of Tourism itself, in ensuring that the beachfronts that we have on Lake Banggolo, the beachfront we have on Lake Tanganyika, we do not have a situation where they are unplanned. We want the beachfront to be well planned, possibly to be able to compete with, say, Copacabana Beach in Brazil. And we are thankful to the ministry that there's a beach development program in Zambia. Again, PS, we're very grateful for the support that you give provincial administration, but also the other institutions, National Heritage Conservation Commission, National Parks, National Museums Board. We have embraced them, and we have a working team ensuring that we build this potential. For us, the tourism sector of Luapula will not just anchor on the waterfalls that we have or the lakes that we have, but it's the other activities, the traditional ceremonies that we have. We boast of the Mtomboko traditional ceremony by His Majesty the Mwata. And again, what we have done is to go back in history, look at what relevance does the chieftaincy in Luapula bring to tourism. You will recall, for those that do not know, that in as much as Livingstone celebrates David Livingstone's travels and David Livingstone's sighting of the Victoria Falls, if you are to actually do a comprehensive trail on David Livingstone, you can actually send it all the way to Luapula, because David Livingstone did meet with the Mwata Kazembe. Actually, when he was coming back and unfortunately met his death in Chitambo, he passed through the Banggolu wetlands. So you can create this trail. And for those who have an imaginative mind, all these are opportunities that are there to create the walking safaris themselves. My colleague from National Parks talked about Kasanka and the Banggolu wetlands, where we have the Black Lechwe, we have the Shubiu, and just the islands of Lunga. So for us in the province, we have ensured that the chiefs are on board, because remember, all these national heritage sites are found in chiefdoms, and we have to continue talking to our traditional authorities to allow us to now give a commercial aspect to some of these traditional heritage sites and traditional customs and traditions that people are holding on to. We now have the first ever community museum in Mwansawombwe. The Zambian circuit, Northern Circuit, only has one museum, which is Mbala, Motomoto, but it cannot, accommodate the history of the entire Northern Circuit. So what we did, again, which is, I think, a plus for provincial administration, was that working with the various investors that are coming into the province, we then created a community museum in Mwansawombwe. So you can come to the province now, and like people do visit the Livingstone Museum or the Lusaka Museum, you can now visit the Mwansawombwe Community Museum. So packaging of tourism is an ongoing event, and we are also happy that a few lodges are coming up in the province. One of the challenges we have, which is an opportunity anyway, is lack of facilities, be it at Ntumbachushi waterfalls or at Lumangwe waterfalls. If you visited these areas today, you find that there's no camping facilities, for instance. There are no lodges there. These sites are still very pristine, but it gives an opportunity to the people in the diaspora to actually invest into campsites, to invest in building lodges along the beachfront of Lake Mweru, the beachfront of Banggolu. And to mention also that there's a little town in Luapula which is not very well known, but which has a lot of potential, and this is Chiengi. Lake Mweru extends from Nchelenge to Chiengi. It's about 100 kilometers long and 65 kilometers wide. But when you are in Chiengi, Chiengi gives you a landscape similar to that of Cape Town, where you have Table Mountain on one side, and then you have the ocean. We have a hill range in Chiengi, which is right on the lakeside, on the lake shore. So again, cable cars or tourism that you can anchor, water and beautiful landscapes. We have that potential in Luapula. And maybe to then talk to what is it that we have done to ensure that when you want to invest in Luapula, you are not frustrated. Because one of the things, again, I'm happy my colleague from ZDA did touch on this, is that we want to fast track investment. We don't want investors to be frustrated. So when anybody expresses interest to invest in any of the sectors in our province, but for purposes of this town hall meeting on the tourism sector, we take it as our own project. We make sure that when you apply, we run with your project, we engage the local authority where you have applied to ensure that your application letter does not sit on the table and gather dust for a long time. And I think this is one one thing that is making Luapula tick. And also, we are now going into developing of beach sport in Luapula. We've seen a lot of sporting facilities come up in Lusaka, the Barcelona Academy. Everybody is doing sporting now. And we have beautiful sand, on our lakeshores. So we are promoting beach soccer, we are promoting beach volleyball, we are promoting all types of beach sports. So we appeal to you out there, please come back home. The strategic location of Luapula, again, the PS in his speech talked about Zambia's strategic location in the region. Let me boast that Luapula is actually strategically located, as a standalone entity in the Great Lakes region. So you can actually anchor the tourism potential. You're able to have tourists coming in from the DRC, you're able to have tourists coming in from the Great Lakes region themselves. Then in terms of connectivity and accessibility, now we have flights into Luapula. For those that are worried of passing through the Pedico or driving through Tuta, you can actually fly down to Luapula via Mahogany Air. You can fly twice a week, Monday and Thursday. And also for those that want to enjoy the scenery, Luapula is accessible from 4 roads, Mansa to Luingu, Mporokoso to Kawambwa. We have the Pedico itself and the Tuta. I'm also happy to mention here, colleagues, that yes, there were a few patches on the Tuta road that were bad. The Pedico was also in bad shape, but government has put contractors on these 2 roads, and they are working on the roads to ensure that we have accessibility to our tourist sites. So you are welcome to Luapula. It is the new paradise of the SADC region of COMESA, and please don't be left out. Unlike Livingstone and other developed sites like Lower Zambezi and other places where you have a lot of established firms, you actually have an opportunity in Luapula to be that person who is actually starting a tourism venture and being among the pioneers of this new belt. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Malpo. Lots of comments. I think you're going to have trouble finding something to respond to in the chat. I encourage other speakers actually to start responding to some questions in the chat. That will really help us in buying back some time. The next speaker is from Destination Livingstone, and Mr. Peter Jones is the chairman of Destination Livingstone. He'll be speaking about investment opportunities in that city.
Hi, everybody. Well, I am a Zambian who went abroad and came back. So I'm an example of what I'm trying to sell to you guys, coming back to this wonderful country and getting on with tourism. So I've been back here for 25 years. About 5 years ago, after plenty of discussion and gently introducing the idea of using Zambia's interesting and often overlooked peaceful history, in particular during my time as the chairman of the Zambian Tourism Agency, the opportunity to set up an organization to realize the great tourism potential of Livingstone was begun, and that is Destination Livingstone. It's a coordinated effort involving government departments along with city council, tourism representative bodies with private individuals. And a master plan was put together, having held a number of stakeholder meetings at which a wide range of members of the local population were asked their opinions on what they wanted the next few years to bring to Livingstone. Can I have the next slide, please? So, tourism over the last 25 years has been pushed along by trailblazing adventurers. Rafting with Sobek started up quite a long time ago. Tongavesi with their lodge and swimming on the very edge of Victoria Falls. Swimming at the very bottom in the pools below the falls themselves, bungee jumping off the bridge. A number of years ago, there was the introduction of white rhinos into the small but very popular Moziotunya Game Park, and the building of a number of quality lodges along the banks of the Zambezi River. These were all things that could not, funnily enough, be done on the Zimbabwean side of the river. That automatically gives us an advantage, which is often overlooked. And it's well worth remembering that. What we've got to do if we're going to compete here is to offer things that the other side cannot do, because we then become one bigger destination. Right, so Destination Livingston is now taking steps to introduce the next generation of tourism development on the Zambian side, which we hope will excite the next generation of investors into the area. Next slide, please. Right, you've got to have a plan to start with, and that is Niagara Falls, the border between America and Canada. Now, as we all know, America is generally believed to be the more powerful of the two countries. Canada is a much bigger country, but surprisingly enough, it's actually the Canadian side which is busier. And you can see the direct comparison, because Zambia is twice the size of Zimbabwe, and generally is thought of as being the quieter of the two countries. So let's see what the Canadians have done. So what they've got is a town called Niagara-on-the-Lake, which is 10 miles from the falls themselves. Next slide, please. As you can see, it's a very beautiful town. And there are lots of add-on businesses that are flourishing there. And remember, Livingston itself is 10 kilometers from the falls, in the same way that Niagara-on-the-Lake is 10 miles from the falls. So it's not dissimilar to what we've got going on our side. Please, next slide. Next slide. Thank you. So working with everyone in the city with our plan, what we're trying to do here is to create a protected heritage zone within Livingston and hope to make it once more the prettiest town in Africa. This is what used to happen a long time ago. To start with, we are looking at putting in a 30-kilometer bypass to the west and north of the city, which you can see on the map there, the red route, which is designed to take all the truck traffic from Kasanka, where the new bridge is about to be opened officially next month. It'll come halfway towards Livingston, then go up to the north and east and connect with the Lusaka road well north of the city. This will reduce the truck traffic in town to practically zero. The idea is to have all the truck yards and the ZRA clearance officers relocated to Kasanka. It's a sensible decision, and that will allow Livingston to rejuvenate itself. Next slide, please. Right, so this is now an area within that protected zone I was talking to you about. It's called Kutaway. If you look at the picture on the left, that is what it is right now. And the picture on the right is what we would like it to become. To turn it into a pedestrianized zone and allow smaller businesses to open up, as you can see, like the photograph on the right. In this area, for example, we could see a series of food bazaars with a mix of Indian and local cuisine and outdoor dining, especially in the evening, to bring in extra nightlife. Livingston has a vibe of its own, but what we'd like to do is to spread it out a little bit to give people a diversity of entertainment in the evenings and during the day. And if you just go back to the picture on the left, Livingston itself is organizing itself. It's clean, tidy. It just needs a little bit of more investment, lick of paint, and bring some businesses into the area. Next slide, please. Okay, there'll be opportunities for investors to buy up old truck yards and turn them into accommodation businesses. The building on the left is pretty much an abandoned yard, and the picture on the right is about 3 doors away and is the accommodation area behind Zambezi Cafe. This is what can very easily be done by local investors to get in there, buy these properties up, and put in accommodation. Now, it doesn't have to be 5-star accommodation. There are good backpacker places in town, and we need more of them to soak up, especially the local traffic coming in from Lusaka and the Copperbelt. When I arrived in Livingston 25 years ago, only 10% of the accommodation businesses in town were owned by indigenous Zambians. Today, that figure is over 60%. As more and more people, more locals move into the tourism business. That is so encouraging, I can't tell you. And the point here is, it's not locals buying out the other businesses, it's creating their own businesses, turning houses into B&Bs and getting involved in tourism. There's a lot going on. Next slide, please. Along the main road, down by the railway line, there are the old railway houses. And some people have already started to begin to turn them into businesses. This one in particular, on the right-hand slide, has been turned into, I think if you've been to Livingston, the Golden Leaf restaurant. But other houses could be turned into gift shops or art galleries, activity sales agencies, or Airbnb and the like. Without the trucks thundering through the town anymore, they'll become ideal properties for investors to buy into. Next slide, please. There are classic large properties like the one shown here, which is the old governor's house, which are sorely underutilized at the moment. And they could be used for such things as weddings. Zambians love their weddings and they put a lot of money into them. Conferences and other such large-scale activities. The town of Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe does not have such buildings. So already we're at an advantage. So we in Zambia can provide differing alternatives to travel agents and MICE operators looking for different venues. It is all there, believe you me. And this building pretty much is empty at the moment. Next slide, please. Right, this is a 100-year-old Livingston Golf Club, and it's just about to come under a huge investment plan with a local businessman, Zambian businessman called Reni Mashingi and his Mozio Tunya Resort. We welcome his investment and development plan, and we look forward to having the golf course on the South African golfing circuit. We can do that. That's a lot of golfing people coming through here on a golfing holiday. It's a wonderful golf course. It's the second oldest in the country. The oldest one is in Chapata. And we very much look forward to having this as a world-class sporting location. Next slide, please. How many Zambians out there realize that the first ever World Cup of any sport in Africa was not Johannesburg 1995. It was, in fact, held in Livingston in 1910. That's it, over 100 years ago. And investors and sponsors are assisting us to revive the sport with local talent receiving support. In the Cambridge crew at the bottom left, you will see the young man called Desmond Nangwenya. He is the first Black African to row with an alumni crew from either Oxford or Cambridge. We are breaking into new ground all the time. And if the Jamaicans can take a bobsleigh team to the Winter Olympics and they don't even have snow and ice in Jamaica, surely to goodness, we can have a Zambian rowing crew at the Olympic Games. If we've held a World Cup here, we should be perfectly capable of doing things like this. Now look at the other photograph, top right. There is nowhere in the world that you can have elephants swimming across a rowing course. It gives us such value when marketing these sorts of things. It is amazing. And these guys from Oxford and Cambridge, when they come over, they are blown away by what Zambia has to offer. And remember, these guys go on to lead big businesses later on in life, and they would want to put their money and effort back into helping Zambia promote this sort of thing. Now, what we did last time out in 2019 was to link it with a Lozi traditional ceremony. The problem in Zambia, I do agree, we could probably host a traditional event every weekend. The problem is we only give foreigners about 2 weeks notice to get there. And of course, we never get enough people up there. But this particular event, ceremony, is called Kupawana. And if we could link the Kupawana to every regatta each year and make it a date so you can put in your diary every September, we do a traditional event just before regattas. We will increase the number of people who fly into Zambia to not only come and see world champions competing on this World Cup site, they will also see a unique, and I mean unique, event in Africa. This amazing ability of the local people to paddle the Indila, the craft around this river, is absolutely fascinating, and we would galvanize a lot of people coming through on their holidays. Next slide, please. As has already been mentioned, in Lusaka, we've now got a local investor's got involved with Barcelona, and they have a very successful football training and five-a-side football ground. Such a venture is crying out to be created in Livingston at one of the rundown sporting properties. There are lots of rundown sporting properties here. They are crying out for people to come through to get involved in them. And we have an organization called a Livingston Sports Festival that will happily work with new investors in such a project if anybody wants to get involved in it and to promote everything that's going on there. Next slide, please. There are, of course, a very great number of successful lodges and hotels on the Zambian shoreline, competing with our counterparts in Zimbabwe to create a world-class destination for both countries. What we must realize here is we must not compete against the Zimbabweans. We need to compete with them to make sure we have one destination, because both sides of the river offer things that are unique. And by dovetailing ourselves together, we make sure we have a complete destination, because as I said earlier on, we've got a number of activities and locations that they don't have in Zimbabwe. So we should be making sure there's good, easy trafficking for both sets of tourists across the board to come and see what each one has to offer. We are one destination, and we welcome new investors as we take us all forward under the banner of Africa's Eden. Next slide, please. Okay, we missed one of my pictures. That was just the Africa's Eden. So we want to make sure that the Victoria Falls region is the gateway to the world's largest unspoilt conservation area, and that is the Casa Zone. And so, as you can see, that is just touching on some of the things that are available in the Livingston area. You just need to be broad-minded, be energetic, come down here, have a good look to see which areas you want to get into, be it accommodation or activities. And we have a very small office at the one-stop shop with Destination Livingston, and we'll happily encourage people to come through and give them ideas and things that they can do. Thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to Zambians coming back to this wonderful country of ours.
Thanks so much, Peter. I wish I had hype people like Destination Livingston persons and Destination Wapula persons. You're super good hyper persons. The next bit is experiences of people who've actually invested into the tourism sector in Zambia, and I'm excited to introduce to you the first one of those, Ms. Brenda Spoor, who's a proprietor for Moiseni Maisonettes. Ms. Spoor, please come on.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Allow me to write on the protocols already used. My name is Brenda Spoor. Could I perhaps have the first slide? Well, those are my contact details, but I guess we can go to them at the end. So if I can have the next slide, please. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to share my experience as an investor in Zambia. So about myself, I am a Zambian, and I also have Dutch nationality. So in a sense, I kind of have two places that I call my home, and I live in the UK, so that's probably my third home as well. So I've lived in the diaspora for about 29 years. So as I mentioned, initially in the Netherlands and currently in the UK. I am an accountant by profession, and I'm, as mentioned, owner of Moiseni Maisonettes. So I'm very passionate about Zambia. Zambia is my home, and I think the longer I've been away, the more passionate I have become. And my family and I travel a lot around the world. And I think what you learn from traveling is, you know, you learn to appreciate different things in different parts of the world, different experiences, different cultures. And, you know, it's made me realize more and more that we actually have so much to offer in Zambia. And that's, you know, where some of the idea of setting up My Cinemas Nets came from. And we've tried to apply some of the ideas of places that we have stayed in trying to give a home away from home to our guests. Next slide, please. I'm quite conscious of the time, so I hope I'm not going through this too quickly. And if I don't manage to finish, then the slides will be circulated. So My Cinemas Nets is a complex of 4. Can you hear me okay? Hello? Hello?
We can hear you all right. Please go ahead.
Okay. My Cinemas Nets is a complex of 4 service self-catering apartments in Ndola. So Ndola is the second or third largest city in Zambia. And one of the things about we set up the business in 2017. So we've been running since then. And pretty much from the beginning, we've consistently been among the top 3 accommodation providers in Ndola on booking.com, which we actually really pride ourselves in, because though I use a lot of tourism products, this is my first experience at running a tourism business. So it's really exciting to actually see that our efforts are being appreciated by our guests. So we have bright, spacious, comfortable accommodation. I like the light, big windows. You know, living in London, I want to appreciate the Zambian sun. And what we want to do is provide a home away from home for all our guests. And they tend to be business customers, but as well as families. In fact, you know, we thought that we'd have more families staying with us. But actually, it's turned out that there are a lot of business customers who essentially, especially if they're working in Ndola or around Ndola for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, actually prefer to be in a house or rather in an apartment rather than sitting in a hotel room. Next slide, please. So as I've mentioned, so a lot of our guests we get through booking.com. And because of the guest experience, we've been grateful for all the reviews that the guests have given us. So, you know, as you can see on the right-hand side, this year we received a Traveler Review Award for pretty much consistently being about 8.1 out of 10 in Ndola as an accommodation provider. So we're very proud of that, but it also means that we have to keep working hard to maintain that. So we train our staff. We actually have staff available on site 24/7. So ideally, they're not working in the evenings, late into the evenings, but obviously it just means that if the guests need any help, there's someone there to help them out. We train our staff and make sure that every guest interaction is important, because, you know, it could be, so whether the guest stays with us or they don't, word of mouth and reviews are really important. So we make sure that every experience with the guest is positive, it's friendly, and it's helpful, because the people who stay with us or don't stay with us, they can at least go off and talk about us. And we want to make sure that when they talk about us, they talk about us positively. So in fact, we're also getting a lot of repeat customers or recommendations from people, which is really good. So we feel confident that we're doing the right thing. But again, we can never be too complacent. So in terms of our furnishing My Cinemas Nets, we've used a lot of the local industry. All of our artwork, you know, has been from local artists. And I've actually had a lot of pleasure spending time with the artists and, you know, selecting pieces and having them framed and actually interacting with our people. So in a way, we're also not only providing employment for our staff, but we're also trying to support the local business. And in fact, pretty much all our furniture is locally made. And so we try to promote the local industry as well. Next slide, please. So running the business, the exciting part. Oh, there's an echo now. Hello? So running the business, the exciting parts. So I'm a people person. So even though I'm an accountant by profession, really at the heart of it, I am really a people person. I mean, I still enjoy accounting, but I love the ability to have guest interactions wherever possible. So I'm not always on site, and a lot of the interactions are with our staff, but I try to make sure to be in touch with the guests as much as possible. So the revenue in terms of people interested in investing, it's much higher than renting out unfurnished apartments. But just a word of caution there. Do remember that though the revenue, and I know people make the mistake of calculating how much we charge per night and saying, oh, 30 days, how much will it be? Yes, sometimes, and actually, you know, we've been fortunate to have quite a number of times when that is the case. But you have to plan for quiet periods because you do have running costs and you still have to pay them whether you have guests or not. So in terms of running costs, we're talking about, I mean, the initial ones being furnishing the apartments is a big outlay. You know, when we built our apartments ourselves, so that was a big outlay. And then you talk about furnishing them. And in fact, it was quite an exciting process because I haven't lived in Zambia for almost 30 years. I didn't know where you buy half of these things. I don't know where I was going to markets and looking at, you know, people whose work looked good and then saying, can you make this for me? And supervising that. So the other costs other costs that, you know, prop up inverters. You know, we have power, you know, we have load shedding or power problems in Zambia. So we had to invest in inverters, booster pumps, the other various business related compliance costs. I think they've been mentioned in some of the slides by some presenters. Staff costs, insurance, electricity, that is quite high in Zambia. And in fact, it seems to be going up quite a lot. So just be aware of that. And in having a booster pump suddenly shot up our costs as well. So, and also worth thinking about if you're investing from abroad is the fact that, you know, transferring money to Zambia in order to invest, you know, you're probably going to lose 5 to 10% of it. Trying to get the money back to the UK, let's say in our case, you will also lose, you know, in transfer costs as well. And also worth remembering, tax is payable in Zambia, which we pay on a monthly basis, but you will also pay tax here in the UK because it turns out that it's seen that, you know, whatever the difference between the tax we would pay here on the earnings and Zambia is, you have to pay for extra. Next slide, please. So the challenges, it's a very competitive market and it is growing. The competitiveness is growing and sometimes the competitiveness is a bit aggressive. You know, many times our posters are taken down. So then there is the weakening of the Zambian currency. I mean, we're probably all aware what has happened to the Zambian currency. So obviously, if you're investing from abroad, this will impact your income. This will impact suddenly, you know, your income gets impacted. The Zambian people are price sensitive because, of course, they're impacted by the higher costs. So we also have a high cost, so you have to look into that. There's a large percentage of no-shows. You know, I don't know if other people have experienced this, but, you know, it was very shocking for us that people book and they say they're coming and they don't show up and they, you know, don't keep in touch. And then, of course, the occupancy and revenue can vary. But apart from that, I mean, I think what I would say is this is a worthwhile investment, you know, but it's not an easy one. But if you have the passion, I think somebody mentioned, you have to be passionate about it. You have to love it because there are moments when it's very stressful, but you really, you know, there are a lot of benefits to be had if you just persevere and love it. So next slide, please. So, and then success and maintaining high standards, you know, so we generally, I have fortunate enough to generally have high occupancy rates, but obviously there are a few moments when they're not high. We've had very good reviews and ratings, and we have to keep working at that because that is actually what drives a lot of our customers, a lot of our guests to us. So using booking.com is our main portal. I mean, we use other places like Airbnb, Facebook, but a lot of our guests come through booking.com. And the good thing is it's recognized worldwide. We have a lot of international guests, and I take a lot of pleasure in showing them the warm Zambian welcome. Mwaiseni actually means welcome. So we want to give them the warm Zambian welcome, the hospitality and the friendliness of our people. And like I said, so when we do things right, when we get good reviews, even the walk-in guests are actually looking at the reviews to determine where they're going to stay. So we have to keep working at our reviews, and we have to keep reminding our guests, our staff, that this is important. So we can't be complacent, but at the same time, I absolutely enjoy the business. I'm absolutely passionate. I would love to grow the business a bit more. In fact, I'm quite excited listening to all the other opportunities in different parts of Zambia, because I would like to actually be able to do a similar kind of business in more, high tourist areas. But I would say it's definitely a worthwhile business, but just have good planning and remember passion, passion, passion. Thank you very much for listening to me. And I don't know if I have any more minutes I could talk about, or have I used up my 10 minutes?
You have done. You have used up, but you could
Okay.
keep chatting in the chat. There are lots of questions for you, actually.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
I apologize for the delays as well as the technical issues that we've experienced, but thank you so much for staying with us. If you joined us through an Eventbrite link and registration, please correct your name or make sure that it's the same name that you registered with in order to stand to win the Bonanza Resort Prize. The next speaker is another person who's actually invested in Zambia, so we get to hear from the last person speaking. It's Mr. Musonda Katewe, the proprietor of Mwamfushi Safari Lodge. Mr. Katewe, please come on.
Thanks, and good evening, everyone. And I hope everyone is able to get me. Am I clear? Can you hear me?
We hear you. We hear you. You're a bit crackly, but
Thank
we
you.
hear you.
Thank you very much. My name is Musonda Katewe. I'm the developer, the promoter, and the proprietor for Mwamfushi Safari Lodge. This is a 100% Zambian-owned lodge. It is situated in Kafue National Park, right in Mumbwa GMA, right on the banks of our might Kafue River. One would ask, and most people have been asking me as to where I drew the motivation to get into this business. One, my motivation arose from the fact that, I've had passion from the time I was young for local tourism and conservation of wildlife. Secondly, it's the experience that, we've gained over a period of time in running local lodges. Yeah. And just like any other business, our business, existing local hospitality business needed growth. And in trying to grow, we thought of expanding and venture into a safari lodge. Yeah. And in doing so, two things were considered. One, we considered to introduce a travel and tour business. Secondly, we considered to develop a safari lodge in either the national park or the game management area. A decision was, of course, made to develop a safari lodge in the GMA area. And what was next is where do we find land? So I embarked on a journey to identify land, and we traveled to various places. For example, I traversed through Nsumbu National Park. I went to Lower Zambezi just in search of a piece of land. I went to Mfue, and finally we managed to get a piece of land in Kafue National Park in the GMA of Mumbwa, right on the banks of the river. And the location we spotted is quite exciting, so beautiful, excellent, and with exciting scenery, and you're actually endowed with a lot of wildlife. Now, the question was, how do we go about it? We've spotted the land, and who do we talk to? And this is also to clear the perception that has been there, as Brian Rose earlier stated, that this place and these places and the business has always been a preserve for foreign investors. For me, I think it's not here or there. It's just a mere perception. Now, the question that everyone has been asking is, how did you manage to spot this place, and how did you acquire it? So through our business links, we were advised the following procedure. I think the director of DNPW mentioned it, except he more focused on the national park. But for me, it's in the GMA. So through our business links, the following was procedure, but the following procedure was advised. One, we were to engage the chiefdom of the area. Two, were to engage stakeholders such as the community through Community Resource Board, which is the CRB. Third thing to do was to engage a department that is, mandated to manage wildlife in Zambia. And in this case, it's Department of National Park and Wildlife for just their expert assessment and consent. The chiefdom and the CRB was engaged, and all conditions set were met. Mainly the condition was that, whatever the proposed investment was, such an investment should actually bring about benefits to the community, and such as job creation for the local people and social corporate responsibility. Yeah. Everything was done. Letters of consent from both the chief and the CRB were obtained with condition clearly stated, as I stated before. And thereafter, DMPW was written to, of course, with the attachment of the same consent letters, because it's a prerequisite for them before they make a decision. And accompanying the letter were site maps, of course, for the same area for easy identification, and the business case, and obviously the architectural drawings for the same desired project. The department was immediately, the department after assessment immediately responded. Before assessment, immediately responded by deploying its officers for an assessment, just to ascertain as to whether the land was viable and suitable for the establishment proposed. An assessment was made in no time, and the go-ahead feedback in writing was given to us with only a condition to get consent from the outfitter. Mind you, our location is in a hunting block, and the outfitter is a serious stakeholder. So the outfitter gave consent, and after consent was given, development commenced as per our schedule. Now, what has been our experience? Our experience has been exciting and pretty much interesting, from acquisition of land itself. And one would like to know, and I think you may wish to know, that land in the GMA everywhere in Zambia belongs to the chief, and it's being administered and presided over by the same chiefs. So they are the first contact in terms of acquisition and allocation, and obviously the community as well. In terms of stakeholder engagement, the experience has been awesome as well. As Department of National Parks and Wildlife and the community, which is the CRB, we've been coordinating very well. They've been very responsive and very educative. And procedures involved was also easy as opposed to what the public actually perceives. If anything, the government through the department encourages local participation in both development of tourism facilities and wildlife conservation. In terms of licensing, our experience has also been good, although it's yet to come. But the experience we've had with the Zambia Tourism Agency was good. I was also shocked that when I entered the licensing office and compliance office led by Mrs. Mwaka Mtelo, everyone was so excited to see a Zambian like me, a local investor like me, to express interest in entering into such a business. So they were so cooperative, they were so helpful. They helped us with a lot of information and explained their checklist. We demystified it, and we're about to meet all the conditions. In terms of cooperation with the department's area office, which is Mumbwa, it was good as well. These guys are very helpful, and the team led by Mr. Shawa, the senior warden, was so good, very helpful. They were the ones that were telling us the do's and don'ts. They provided scouts for us. Mind you, we are very new in the business, and we didn't know the rules of the game in the park. But these guys have been very, very awesome. They really helped us. They're so professional, and everything is history. Now, every success has challenges, and of course, the only challenge that we had, major challenge we had, was a poor road network. I think one of the listeners alluded to that. Generally, roads are bad. I'm sure you're aware that, GMAs and national parks are very far away from cities where we get construction materials such as block, cement, and other materials. Now, to transport those materials, it's a nightmare. We just hope that the government is coming up with a deliberate policy to improve the road networks for easy access, and this will ultimately reduce the cost of construction, removing fear from the would-be investors, and to make such an investment much less capital intensive. And in conclusion, we are just, however, happy and pleased to note that so far there's been interest from domestic tourism wishing to get away to our lodge from all over the country and are looking forward to our launch. We are confident that investors, that there is no law that actually stops anyone, especially locals, from venturing into this business. As long as you follow procedure, and all you need is just to have the determination, the zeal and the passion for the business, and you're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that concludes all the speakers for the Q&A. And remember to change your name to what it is that you registered with in order to be eligible for a resort prize. We have quite a lot of questions. So what I'll do is I'm going to ask the first set of three, one question each as well. 1 second. So for the permanent secretary, what tangible steps are being taken and policy changes enacted to support a viable environment to help tourism thrive beyond what it is today? And Dr. Chuma Simkonda, as Lusaka is growing at such a rapid pace, what plans do you have around protecting the Lusaka National Park? And the third one, then I'll take the next three after this, is for Mrs. Doris Shubakile Kofi. Will the incentives available be extended beyond the initial period for new investors? Permanent Secretary, go ahead.
Thank you very much. As I said in my presentation, the role of government is largely to create a conducive environment. And we have quite a number of policies that support that position. The first one is to ensure that there is close collaboration between the ministry and the various players in the tourism sector. We work closely with the private sector, we work closely with the communities, we work closely with the traditional leadership, because all these are key in ensuring that our investors come and they're given quick access to the kind of services that they want to offer to this country. But over and above that, the government is going to very shortly engage in a process of reviewing the Act for the National Parks and Wildlife, the Department of National Parks and Wildlife. So this is an opportunity for all stakeholders to firm up areas where they feel there's a lot of gray areas and to come up with suggestions that will make it even easier to do business in the tourism sector. I'm sure Director for National Parks and Wildlife will speak more to that. But I think from what we've heard and what we've seen tonight, we should be more positive about gaining access and doing business in the tourism sector. We've had speakers from Wapula, Destination Livingstone, and individual Zambians that have confirmed the fact that most of the difficulties that we imagine are just mere perceptions. When you are determined, when you have a vision, you'll find that doors are open for anyone and everyone that wants to come and invest in our tourism sector. I was particularly encouraged by the last speaker, a Zambian. And from the look of things, from where I'm sitting, a young man, but very determined, fired up with vision of what he wants to do for himself, what he wants to do for his country. And I think we need that daring spirit, that courage of conviction, or conviction of courage, both ways, to put your best foot forward and come and make a difference. If you meet any hurdle, the office is open. Zambia Tourism Agency will be ready to receive you and guide you. The Department of National Parks will be ready to receive you. The Tourism Council of Zambia, this is a private sector frontage to assist everyone who wants to get involved in the tourism sector. They will be happy to receive you and give you all the help that you need. Destination Livingstone, I think that was Tom. Tom was literally on his knees begging us to come down to Livingstone and see what we can do, how we can get involved. So I think tonight what we saw was a wide array of people involved in the tourism of Zambia, giving and sharing their experiences, and on the whole, giving us an affirmation that it's possible to do business, to invest in our tourism sector, that it's not only possible, it's happening. It's happening. Like I said, let's put our best foot forward. Everyone tonight was saying one thing. If you're in doubt, come, we'll help you. And I extend the same invitation. If you're in doubt, you need help, you need information, the ministry will be ready to receive you and give you that support and that help that you require.
Thank you.
So I think it's time to get going and to start doing. And instead of just spending time in wondering, is it possible? Is it possible? Is it possible? We say, yes, it is possible. It is not only possible, it's happening. It's happening. You heard it. You heard it tonight. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary. We're aiming to end this at 1:15. So if we could all just rush through the responses. Go ahead, Mrs. Coffey, please.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
So if I go to the question was whether to be into the 2022 going further, we cannot tell. that decision will be made by Minister of Finance. But I would like to draw you to the economic recovery program that is running between 2021 up to 2023. And in there are a lot of relief measures that are proposed, but will be staggered from 2020 up to 2023. And what we have for this year is, as the PS outlined in his speech earlier on before the other speakers came in. So we can only look out for what 2022 will have for the tourism sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Dr. Simkonda, I apologize. Go ahead.
Well, the Lusaka National Park is in a context of a lot of pressure for the growing population of Lusaka. And I think the more the population grows, the greater the pressure, and therefore it's very likely that it could be encroached upon and the park itself could actually not be there. Our first step is really to physically mark the boundary of the park and ensure that really everyone knows that this is the boundary. And also to continue with the monitoring. But I think what is even more important is not to let Lusaka National Park at any time look like it is passive land, but to translate it really into an economic engine. And then this piece of land really needs to be relevant to the surrounding people, so that the people themselves could be the defenders of the park itself. So once these are done, I think it won't be just the Department of National Parks and Wildlife fighting off people that want to come in, but people themselves really need to protect this because they should realize it is their resource.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Mr. Brian Rose. What is the venture capital appetite for tourism-oriented business in Zambia?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Traditionally, when you think of venture capital, right, that's when a large investor or an investment fund puts money into a number of businesses, right? I mean, the nature of venture capital is that you invest in a lot of different businesses and basically hope that one makes it big, right? That the approach from a venture capital standpoint, that's how they work and that's how they spread their risk of return. So in terms of venture capital, looking at individual business investments in Zambia, I would say that's relatively low. However, when you look at individual investors who are not in a venture capitalist per se, but looking at specific opportunities for investment in this sector, I think that's where the likelihood of interest and kind of being able to facilitate that investment or find investment partners is much, much higher on that stand, kind of from that perspective.
Thank you very much. So given that the chat has really been good at engaging people, we'll move forward to the prize draw. And I'm really sorry that we haven't had a chance to ask all the questions. If I can get the comms team to come on, please, and proceed with the prize draw.
Hello, good evening. I'm going to be your lovely assistant to run the poll. I'm going to give out some very basic rules and terms for the prize draw. The first one is that all Zambians Together stakeholders do not qualify for this. And unfortunately, that was decided way back. So if we spin and it picks me, unfortunately, I have to respin. This also sadly applies to our speakers. You don't qualify either, and we apologize for that. So the way that I'm going to quickly share the screen, and so I can explain how. Can you confirm that you can see that? A nod? Yes. So the
Yes.
names,
Okay.
the entries have been taken from the Eventbrite registrations, and we had 241 entries. So this is everyone that registered via the Eventbrite up to 3 p.m. today. Past that, I think that there was nowhere for you to register either at all. And then what we've got here is the surname, the last name, and the order number. So when we spin and the winner is picked, it will be the last name and the order number. And if it turns out we've got a few periods on the call, in that case, we will then have to go offline to verify whoever has got the matched number. But we're hoping that it's not going to be any duplicated surnames. Is that clear enough? All right. So good. So I'm gonna then, I don't know if you can see my mouse. I'm about to kick the middle to spin. Good luck, everyone. Spinning, 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 spinning. And the winner is Mitsasi, surname Mitsasi. And the order number is 170-233-7925. Order number 170-233-7925. And surname is, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's Mtaisi. Mtaisi? That's probably more accurate, isn't it? Mtaisi.
Yes.
Yes. So Mtaisi, you are the winner, and the prize is you get 2 nights at Bonanza Resort, and details will be emailed to you. And congratulations to you, and thank you for everyone that participated in the prize draw. Over to you, moderator.
Congratulations to our winner, and that marks the end of the Bonanza prize. Everybody, thanks so much for participating. We'll be in touch with the winner using the contact details that you used to register on Eventbrite. I would now like to invite His Excellency Lieutenant General Paul Mihova, the High Commissioner, to give his closing remarks, and then we can get ready to pray us out, please.
His Excellency is muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much. Well, let me first thank the Permanent Secretary once again for Permanent Secretary, Minister of Tourism and Arts, and all the distinguished participants and speakers that have given us well-articulated presentations this evening. This has been a very exciting event, I must say. I think amongst the many meetings that we have had, I think this is one of those very exciting ones. And of course, we look forward to many more. We have gotten a lot of insights on how we can invest in the tourism sector. And I think many of us are very ready to come back home and invest in the tourism sector. As you saw, the Permanent Secretary, from the many questions in the chat, the diaspora is keen to come and invest back home. And I think the facilitators are there. People will be ready to be received and get all the information that is required. And for the diaspora in the UK, our office there who can give you more information on the tourism sector. Please knock on his door anytime, and he can give you all the details that you want. He can link you up back home so that it becomes very easy. You have seen what we have been told, that it's very easy to get all the licenses and whatnot, so there are no hassles, and course, Pelekamoyo will be there to guide you further. And for the organizers, thank you very much again for putting up this event. Well done, and please keep it up. And also congratulations to the winner of the draw. I wish you very perfect nights in the Bozana Lodge near Lusaka International Airport. Once again, I thank everyone, and God bless you. Please keep well as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and many thanks to all our partners, and also special gratitude to Mr. Pelekamoyo for all the contacts that he helped with.
You're now tuned into the top of the hour evening news on So Online Radio.
The evaluation.